webinar. And for anyone who's just joined, welcome. Thank you for joining. Today's webinar topic is organic sustainable wine production, organic and sustainable wine production. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Liz Pitcher. So Liz is a sustainability specialist with the AWRI. Liz has qualifications in both agricultural science and applied science in viticulture and 20 years of wine industry experience. Liz worked for 7 years across South Australia's Limestone Coast, Langhorne Creek, McLaren Vale and Adelaide Hills regions as a grower liaison officer for Treasury Wine Estates. And most recently, she worked as a technical and organic manager at Chalk Hill Viticulture in McLaren Vale. So in that role, Liz gained extensive experience implementing sustainability and organic certification systems, including managing Sustainable Winegrowing Australia on behalf of 17 vineyards. So Liz has also served as a director of NASA Organic for the past 2 years, giving her valuable strategic insight into organic certification systems. So in other words, Liz lives and breathes sustainability and organic certification. So if there's anything you need to know about certification, Liz is your gal. So Liz, if you're ready, I'll invite you to start your presentation.
Thank you, Robin. Get to the start of my presentation. Okay, what's the difference between organic and sustainable production systems? So today I'm going to talk about why you'd be interested in potentially becoming organic or sustainable. What are the actual differences between the two? Will they change the way I do things? How long will it take to become certified to other program? And what are the actual requirements? Okay. So Australian consumers are starting to consider what they can do to adapt to climate change. And they're looking for things to do to change their life. One of those things being their wine choices. So since the COVID pandemic, the consumers have become more concerned about both the environment and their health. They're thinking about what's acceptable and sustainable with respect to products, packaging, and consumption, and becoming increasingly engaged and aware of GMOs, pesticide use, additives in wine, and the perception of better taste. Certification is also proof that an organic or sustainability claim is true, that produce has been checked as compliant with certification standards, can provide a marketing advantage and differentiation in that marketplace, which has become increasingly competitive since the geopolitical environment changed due to COVID, with the change to the introduction of Chinese tariffs. It formally acknowledged commitment to sustainability and or organic production and can drive change in the business. Consumers have also got pretty high expectations when they buy wine. Beyond price and quality, they expect that there's a certain level of stewardship has gone into producing the wine that they purchase. As individuals, we're doing a pretty good job, but as an industry, we're under increasing scrutiny and need to be able to clearly demonstrate to consumers our environmental and social stewardship. So most growers and winemakers we talk to intrinsically understand the importance of sustainability, and more grape and wine businesses are using certification of either organic or sustainability as a mechanism to tell their stories to the marketplace. Our customers also demand these credentials, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is on the screen there, the 17, is the blueprint to achieving a better and more sustainable future for all. It clearly identifies focus areas that we need to work on and articulates goals to each. And organic and sustainable practices are aligned with those sustainable development goals. So how do they compare? Well, we're quite often asked how they compare. This is a really simple representation showing the common elements of both, including soil health, biodiversity in the middle, pest and disease management, water, land and soil. There's also record keeping required in both, but different records for the different systems. You'll also notice there that on the organic circle, GMOs are specifically excluded. The Australian wine industry's position is that no GMOs, genetically modified organisms, are allowed to be used in the production of wine. Therefore, GMOs, it's also inherent in the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, so the Australian Sustainability Program. Sustainability, though, extends to include economics, community and social responsibilities, air quality, management of waste and wastewater, biosecurity, energy and fuel, and also business management systems that impact on sustainability. So organic covers off on more of the environmental side, and sustainability includes social and economic elements as well, and broadens out the scope of some of the environmental aspects. So differences are in the sustainable certification is centred around the Sustainability Action Plan. So there's a very, very small example on the screen here. This is like a roadmap on which identified areas for improvement are recorded and tracked. In organic certification, the key document required is a written organic management plan. This documents practices and potential risks to those practices that might compromise organic integrity, and those practices overlap with sustainable certification in terms of management of the organic integrity, equipment, harvest, management of natural resources, crop management, and also traceability of records for inputs and harvest. Not to this, sustainability doesn't trace records to the same extent as organic management though. So both require farm maps as part of that process. And organic certification also requires more due diligence to ensure all inputs are compliant or a derogation is obtained for inputs that might not be compliant. So fresh care, I've lost my page. So the fresh care standards are a private standard. The certification to the Australian Wine Industry Standard for Sustainable Practice, or AWISP for winery and viticulture, is through Fresh Care, which is a privately owned standard developed by and with the Australian wine industry. So it's a certification to the national standard for organic and biodynamic produce is accredited jointly by the Department of Agriculture and IFOAM. So this is the minimum requirement to achieve and maintain organic certification in Australia. And in addition, there are also private standards such as these developed by NASA Organic and Australian Organic, which operators may choose to be certified to as well. These are over and above the minimum requirements in the national standard as maintained by the Department of Agriculture. So it's widely agreed that sustainable production is based on environment, social and economic aspects of businesses. So unlike organic, there is no one internationally recognised definition or set of principles on which sustainability is based. However, in the wine industry, the fundamentals are agreed by international organisations, which include the International Organisation of Vine and Wine and the International Federation of the Beverage Sector. So there are 4 principles on which organic agriculture is based, as defined by the International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movements. So health includes sustaining and enhancing health of soil, plant, animal, human, and the planet. Ecology is based on living ecological systems and cycles, working with, emulating, and sustaining. Fairness is about building relationships to ensure fairness, are the common environment, and care is that they're managed responsibly to protect health and well-being of people and the environment. So sustainability requires annual entry of data and workbook metrics into the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia website and annual internal audits. The external audit, however, is every 3 years. Organic certification of vineyards and wineries requires annual audits with potential spot inspections. So there is some organic management production systems, such as compost systems, input producers only require organic audits every 2 years, but vineyards and wineries do require annual audits. So in sustainability, there are no additional requirements beyond that of conventionally produced wine in Australia for certified sustainable wine exports. However, certified organic wines do require additional documents prior to export, and which varies depending on the country of export. So these are some an application from one of the certifying bodies, and a list here of the export requirement documentation for different countries that are required. So these need to be applied and paid for over and above when you're wanting to export to any of these countries. So more information about the exports. So the Australian Wine Industry Standard of Sustainable Practice is our national sustainability program for the wine industry, and there is no additional export regulation requirement for certified sustainable wine from Australia. As mentioned before, all organic and or biodynamic operations are certified to the Australian National Standard for organic and biodynamic produce. But to export, though, in addition, there is also certification to the organic standards of the country of export needed. So you need to have certification to Australian standards plus any of these other standards if you're wanting to export to those markets. So that's all at additional cost. So the fundamental premise of the sustainability program is continual improvement of both the program and for members of the program. The national standard for organic or biodynamic, the organic certification is based on maintenance of compliance, so maintaining your compliance with certification. So here's the examples of the two wine industry sustainability standards for winery and viticulture, and this is the national standard for biodynamic produce. As you can see, continual improvement of the program. This was developed in 2020, and the national standard for organic and biodynamic produce was last updated in September 2016. So it has been around for a lot longer, but it hasn't been as dynamic. In terms of continual improvement of people that adhere to, that certify to the program, so members of the program every year fill in data and workbooks. These and the workbook that's required to be a member of the program is a stepwise transition. So level 1 represents you have knowledge of that topic. Level 2 shows that you take some actions towards it. Level 3 is recognise best practice. And level 4 is about continuous improvement embedded in your program, so above and beyond best practice. So this gives tools to show that if you're potentially interested in finding out where you're at compared to best practice, recognise best practice in sustainability, what you need to do and what you could do to improve. And there's tool tips throughout, fact sheets throughout, and guidance. And it really isn't inherent to necessarily reach level 3. It's not a race. There is no white line fever. As you can see here from this example, 41% of people who answered this question in this year, in the 1920 season, achieved a number 1. They had a soil management plan, treated blocks differently, but didn't necessarily write down what that plan was. So that's where it's all about improvement, not perfection, and showing you pathways that if you did choose to improve, you could do so and how to do so. So sustainable certification in terms of operations is about management of the production system, encouraging softer chemicals, improving, making improvements throughout the program wherever possible, and considering all your different options and increasing efficiency. Organic certification is about the method of production, not using synthetic imports, not using genetically modified. They can also be sustainably certified. So it's more about track and traceability to make sure you maintain the compliance of primarily the input products, and also the fruit and where the fruit goes. So in terms of trust marks, There are 6 certification bodies accredited to audit both sustainability and organic standards. For sustainable certification, there is a single trust mark for domestic and international markets. For organic certification, each certification body has their own trust mark, and then there are variations on these for international markets. So in Australia, for sustainability, there's a single trust mark that will increase in exposure over time. The trust mark was only released in the middle of last year. The organic trust marks are much more widely known because they have been established. Some of them have been established for 30 years, but there's many different variations. And in terms of trust mark use on labels, for sustainable certification, the wine has to contain fruit from certified vineyards. At least 85% of wine in a blend needs to be from a certified vineyard, and it also needs to be made in a certified winery. Organic certification, to make a label claim, you either need to have 100% of fruit from an organic vineyard and made in an organically certified winery, or a minimum of 95%. So this is an extract from the national standard where it states represented 100% or at least 95% of the ingredients. So these need to be proven. The 85% claim on sustainable certification needs to be proven, and with documentation provided to the AWRI for verification. And for organic certification, verification is by your certification body. So in terms of data and benchmarking, in the sustainable program, you've got the ability to benchmark, tracking your own business from year to year through the data and workbook metrics that are filled in. You can check and compare with regional, state and national figures, and also see how you're tracking compared to best practice and the sustainability standards. The program intrinsically gives you tracks and provides you scope 1 and scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions, and summarises your electricity, fuel, waste, water, etc. And these metrics will evolve over time and are aligned with the wine industry zero carbon targets. So you can see here, these just a couple of very small snapshots of some of the benchmarking summaries that are provided. For organic, it's much more insular with minimum opportunity to benchmark. You can't necessarily see or aware of what's going on over the fence, but it is a larger program. It's not specific to the wine industry, and there isn't any data capable of capture of a comparable nature. So it's not as measurable. And once again, here's another example of the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia benchmarking. So you've got the ability to compare your water use compared to other people in whichever category you're comparing against. So you can see this is an example that's quite often given in the sustainability training, certification training, where yield is about 56%, about average. Water use is very high, diesel use is very high. So in this situation, quite possibly water is pumped out through a diesel motor, and there's some efficiencies that need to be improved there. Okay. So cost. For sustainable certification, it costs between $500 to $700 a year. Organic certification varies a lot. It can range between $2,000 to $7,000 a year. So for sustainability, you need to maintain a membership to Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, which is an annual cost of $110. And then you need to attend a once-off certification training, and depending on which training provider you choose to use, it can cost somewhere between $400 and $1,000. And audits are every 3 years, and so they can range between $1,200 and $2,000. So for organic certification, it varies highly between certification bodies, each certification body, and that's why the audit cost for sustainable certification varies a lot. Each certification body has their own way of fees and fee structures. So you have an once-off application fee Most certification bodies have an annual membership fee. So if you're certified to Australian and an international market, you need to pay a membership fee for both organic certifications. A number of certification bodies have got an annual license fee, or otherwise known as a levy. And then there's also an annual inspection fee or fee for audit, for your audit to come out. And if you're choosing to export produce, you'll get charged. You need to get charged for every application you make. So the total cost for sustainable certification is determined, well, for both, is determined by the certification body fee structure and the number of programs you're certified to. So for sustainable certification, if you've also got HACCP certification or organic certification, you can reduce your cost of auditing. And if you've got more than one membership to sustainable wine growing, there's a membership fee for each member and an audit for each member of the program as well. So for a vineyard and winery, for sustainability, those memberships are separate. For organic certification, depending on your business structure, it can be as a single certification. Okay, so sustainable certification is specific just to the wine industry, only includes vineyards and wineries. Organic certification covers across multiple sectors, encompassing input manufacturers, producers, processors, wholesalers, retailers, and importers. So sustainable certification is specific to vineyard and winery systems and processes. It records production, waste, water, electricity, fuel, biodiversity, soil, pest and disease, community, and economics. There's a much wider range of data metrics recorded and tracked and annually reported. Organic certification, however, is wider ranging from vineyard and winery inputs, processing to bottling. So recording inputs, production, biodiversity, soil, pest and disease, and water, and some inputs and processes are restricted. So it's usually inputs in vineyards, so you can't use synthetic pesticides, and processes, depending on which market you're planning to go through. There's some restrictions on fining and filtration in organic certification. Will they change the way I do things? So both require preventive management strategies to reduce reliance on inputs and implementation of monitoring systems to evaluate. So in sustainable certification in the vineyard, you need to consider all the options prior to pest and disease management decisions. And in winery, softer options are preferred and encouraged. In organic certification, it's got a much stronger emphasis on biological and physical processes than chemical, because there's less options. And in the winery, all inputs need to be from natural origin, with some restrictions on methodology and sulfur, as I mentioned before. How long does it take? How long is a piece of string? There is no defined timeline for sustainable certification. Once you've got your records established and all your documentation up to speed, you can go ahead. It can take 3 to 6 months, though, to transition from being a member of the Sustainable Wine Growing to a certified member. So you need to do a once-off training session, which gives you access to all the potential templates and documents that you could use if you haven't got anything else yourself. Preparing records to fulfill the requirements of the standard, organise and complete the audit. Those processes can take between 3 to 6 months, depending on how much time or your aptitude, but it's designed to be for anyone capable, anyone who's involved in the industry should be capable of preparing for certification, even if you prefer to be out in the vineyard or out in the winery. There's lots of tools to help you. In organic certification, it's much more defined. In the vineyard, there's 36 months of no prohibited inputs before you're even eligible for organic certification. So you can't put any, you've got to wait full 36 months. So it's not 3 years, it's 36 months. And you also need to have a minimum of 1 year of in-conversion. So you don't necessarily need to apply for organic certification at the beginning of those 36 months, but you need to at least have an initial inspection at least 1 year prior to when you're wanting to become organic, fully certified organic. For the winery, there's no in-conversion, but you do need to have your records and systems in place ahead of an initial inspection for certification. And it can take, for organic certification, it can take 3 to 6 months to prepare your paperwork and prepare for your application process. So what are the requirements of certification? There are third-party auditors that are either employed or contracted through certification bodies, and these are accredited to manage certification to organic or sustainability standards. There's regular audits, either annual for organic or triennial for sustainability audits, and potentially organic has spot audits. Both require maintenance of documentation and record keeping systems. They are different. You can go from being certified sustainable to organic with minimal additional paperwork required. If to go from certified organic to sustainable, you will need to have additional records in hand because it's a wider scope of certification. In both systems, you need to manage your business in compliance with the standards, and you need to apply for use of the trust mark. So in sustainability, the application is to the AWRI. In organic, it's to your certification body. So Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, it works by having the annual data and workbook that you fill in, and then certification. So you can actually, for sustainability, just be a member of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia without having to go through the process of preparing extra rigor, extra paperwork. You can just be a member and track how you're going. You don't need to go down the line of certification. With organic, you really do. You're either organic or you're not. You can align with some organic management practices without being fully certified, but you're not going to be recognised without. So for the organic certification process, as I said, year 1 starts, the 36 months of no prohibited input starts. You need to make operational changes in that first year. The second year, I've usually prepared documentation, done that application for certification, had an initial audit to become in conversion, so that you've actually got that in conversion status. And in the third year, once you're closer to your 36 months, you're eligible for consideration. You're not necessarily going to be given it, you're eligible to be considered. And then if you pass your audit and pass the review, you then can, then you get given a contract for certification. So just finishing up, there is lots in common between certification of organic and sustainability. Both focus on minimising harm to the environment and encouraging biodiversity. In different ways, both encourage softer chemical options and use of alternative management strategies for pest control, including biological and cultural options. And both focus on management of potential risks that could compromise integrity of certification. Aspects of both organic and sustainable management are utilised in conventional management of vineyards and winemaking practices. There is no one correct system of managing vineyards or making wine. It's very specific to individual businesses and situations. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm happy to invite questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz. What a comprehensive summary of the differences between sustainable certification and organic certification. So I'm just going to jump into the Q&A section. So there's a question, if you want to be certified organic, do you need to be certified twice if you want to be a SWA member and pay twice? So I guess if you want to be a member and certified by both Sustainable Winegrowing Australia and organic, do you have to do everything twice and pay twice?
The best advice I can give is not to duplicate anything. Yes, you do need the certification to both systems is separate. They are separate. You can organise to have the audits conducted at the same time, though. You don't have to have separate audits. The 6 certification bodies, 2 of those certification bodies are also certified to audit to sustainable and organic. So you can choose that to have the audits at the same time. And the best advice is just don't duplicate anything. Vineyard or property maps, the same property map can be applied and can be prepared for organic and sustainable. They don't need to be separate. And I'd say exactly the same for all of the other documentation as well. You only need to do things once. So you do need to pay twice, but you only need to prepare the documentation once. Just be smart about the way you do it.
Okay, that is very valuable information. Thank you. So we've got a question. Is there a list available of certified sustainable wineries?
Yes, there is. On the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia website, you can do a member search and have a look there. All of the members of the program are listed, and it shows who's certified, whether they're vineyard or winery, and how long they've been a member of the program for.
Okay.
And you can do an operator search for organics as well. But the organic operators, it's depending on which certification body they're with. So you have to search on each individual certification body. But with sustainability, you can just search on the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia website and find all the information.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, Neville Rowe has a question. Please clarify the difference between 3 years versus 36 months for organic no prohibited inputs period. Is it just not 3 calendar years?
No, not at all. It's from the date of the last prohibited input. So usually I've always thought in terms of, okay, so if you're thinking, I want to convert to organic certification. So we think in terms of vintage year. So because it's from the date of your last prohibited input, you want to allow yourself a little bit of leeway, approval process for that 36 months. So your last prohibited input in a vineyard, you might want to think about not applying any herbicide or synthetic fungicide after November, so that you've at least got a little bit of pinch point. So November 2020, for instance, you've got to wait till November 21, 22, 23, and then vintage 24, you'll be eligible for being fully certified organic. So if you apply herbicide just after vintage, you've got to wait till three vintages after. So it's effectively 3 vintages after that date. So you essentially, you've got a little bit of time up your sleeve, which is why 36 months is critical as opposed to calendar or vintage timing. So vintage timing matters more to us. In other industries, you can start producing organically whenever, but for us, we're limited to vintage. So that's why 36 months, you've got a little bit of wriggle room in the middle of the year where you can still get on top of issues if you've got issues in your vineyard without compromising your organic integrity and the timing of when you're able to have organic fruit and wine.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Another question, does organic certification limit final volume of sulfur in any form in the finished wine?
Yes. It's 100 parts per million from memory, total in a wine label. So when you're doing an application for using for organically certified wine for a blend, you do need to provide the sulfur levels.
Thank you. If a business has multiple vineyards, can a single Sustainable Winegrowing Australia certification cover multiple sites?
It can. The criteria is that they need to be under the same ownership structure, they need to be in the same GI region, and they need to be managed in the same way. So if you've got a conventional and an organic vineyard, they really need to have separate memberships and separate certifications. But you can, so those 3 criteria apply. If you fulfill all of those, yes, you can have more than one vineyard in a region. have it as a member of the program, and have it certified to the program.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there a national standard for just vineyards, or does the national standard cover all industries?
For sustainability, we're ahead of the game in the wine industry. We've really got our act together. Our standard is for vineyards and wineries. There are other businesses that have other industries, agricultural industries, that have environmental standards and sustainability standards, but there is no national sustainability standard across industries, unlike organic, where there is sustainability, it is specific. And I know that other industries have looked over the fence at our sustainability program and are interested in introducing something similar in their agricultural industry.
Great, thank you. Is there an easy way to find a list of allowable organic fungicide inputs?
There's a list of additives. There's a list of things that are prohibited and things that are allowed. There's appendixes in the national standards and in the two private standards that are also in the Australian wine industry for organic. But quite often, in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed, you need to search, and input manufacturers need to supply, well, they are obliged to supply you with an current organic certificate. So the onus is always back onto the operator, the organic operator, to check, to do their due diligence and check the integrity of whatever product they're putting into their property. So there can be changes over time with products that are okay and are not okay. So there are some sulfurs that are certified organic and some that are not, that are made from synthetic origin.
All right, great, thank you. Are there any inputs or methods allowed in sustainable systems that are not allowed in organic certification? I think you had a slide that described that. Anyway, in your words.
You can still apply synthetic chemicals in sustainable systems that you can't apply in organic. For instance, you can apply herbicides. You're encouraged to minimise the use of chemicals and apply softer options, but it's not restricted as such.
Okay. With Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, at what point do you recommend engaging with other departments of the same company in sustainability best practice? So this person is, or this company is overhauling their waste management to align with Sustainable Winegrowing Australia Workbook standards. Will that ever extend to the cellar door, restaurant, gardens, etc., for audit purposes?
That's very good timing. At the moment, it's vineyards and wineries. We are about to undertake a review of the standards with the view to, there has been demand, there has been questions asked. And as I mentioned in the presentation, the program itself is a program of continual improvement. It's not static. It's very responsive to the needs of the industry. It's developed for the industry, by the industry. So the first instance and the greatest demand has been to introduce it into packaging, so bottling facilities. But I have also had inquiries about cellar doors. So we're about to embark on that review. So it's watch this space in the next 12 months. It's, yeah, there is potential for that to occur, yes.
Wonderful, good news. Another question for you. If, for example, you are 2 years post-organic certified, you have a vineyard that's 2 years post-organic certification and you make a mistake, so you apply a product that you're that's not allowed, do you have to start the 36 months again from that time that you applied that product?
It depends how and where that product was applied. So you can exclude if it was just one block on a property or one wine. There are wineries that have conventional wines as well as organic wines in the same winery. You can just that wine, if it was in a wine, is just no longer certified organic. If it's on a vineyard for the 36 months, that block or that patch would need to start the process again, would need to start the 36 months again. And that's where if there's any drift from neighbours, or because you can have spot with them tests, you can get soil tests done and leaf tests done for contaminants and for evidence of synthetic pesticides. So if that's detected on your property, the 36 months starts from date of detection. Yes. So you've got to be very, very careful with spraying, neighbour spraying boundaries. If herbicide is detected across the boundary, you could be in trouble. But you can, if you've got a cooch issue that rears its head or something like that, you can exclude a block from certification, and then once you're 36 months down the track, you can reintroduce it, increase the scope.
Wonderful.
Well, it's not all lost.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. I think that's all the questions that we have. But if anyone does have any other questions, obviously you can see that Liz has a huge amount of knowledge in this area and is very happy to share her knowledge. So if you do have any other questions, you can always jump on the AWRI help desk. So you can email via helpdesk@awri.com.au, or you can call the AWRI reception and ask to speak to Liz, and you'll be put through to her. Having said that, we've just had 3 questions come up again. So James has asked, can you have parts of vineyards certified?
Yes, you can. Yes, I did address that before. So you can define the boundary of where you want the certification. It's easier to do that with certification to Australian standards than USDA. So there's different requirements for different markets, certification to different export markets. So you need to be aware of that as you're going through the process. Do your due diligence.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Now, Mark Evans has said, in organic growing, if a product is biological but does not have a certification on it, can it be used?
It can potentially be used. You would need to, the best recommendation is to contact your certification body and ask the question. They might ask for a list of ingredients or information about that product, but the best thing to do is, if it's not certified, you think it might be okay, ask for approval, so you can read different sections of the standards as backup for yourself. But yes, there is a possibility, but make sure you cover yourself and get that agreement with the certification body ahead of time.
Thank you. And James has written another question. What about running sheep on the property? Do they need to be sort of certified organic?
There are rules. My involvement with organic vineyards hasn't actually had sheep yet, but I believe there is a 3-week quarantine period. There is a section that they need to be corralled and on a certified property for 3 weeks before entry. So there are restrictions, yeah. Okay. But you can have sheep, yes.
All right, thank you.
That's not my expertise.
Okay, thank you. So Rob Bramley has written something interesting. It's possibly important to point out that what is being discussed here are the requirements of certification systems, as opposed to assessment of whether particular practices confer sustainability. It's not difficult, based on the laws of thermodynamics, to demonstrate that many production systems, including organic systems, are not truly sustainable. I make this point to highlight that trying to be sustainable is arguably more important than having someone certify that you are. Thank you, Rob. Your insights are always very interesting.
And I would absolutely back that up as well. I think there's an awful lot of people that don't formally identify as sustainable, but inherently have intuitive practices that really, truly are sustainable. There aren't defined limits at present on what in terms of maximum amount of water per hectare and things like that. Doesn't mean to say that it won't occur in the future if there's a need. So it is a continual improvement. At the moment, it's about uptake and exposure and increasing knowledge of best practice and ability to get there.
And I guess the limit on water applications is really tricky. It depends on where you are and the source of your water. So yeah, that would be quite challenging. Yeah.
And it's the same with limits on anything in the vineyard.
Great. So Greg has said, for sustainability membership, is there a separate membership payment for both vineyard and winery?
Yes, they are separate memberships because there's different metrics collected for vineyards as to winery. Yes, we are hoping that for people that part of the review of the standards and the evolution of the program, we are hoping that we can have dual memberships, so you can have vineyard and winery and then fill in one workbook. That's watch this space. That's still in progress.
Great. Thank you. Excellent. So thank you again, Liz. It was a really great presentation, very concise and informative. But as I did mention before, if you have any other questions, contact the help desk and ask for Liz, and she'll be very willing to answer any of your questions. I'd also like to thank the audience, and your participation in these webinars is really, really valuable. It really gives an insight to us about the challenges that you're facing, but it also creates this great discussion as well. I'd also like to thank Wine Australia for their funding support for running these webinars. And as I said, this session, as with all AWRI webinars, are recorded, and the link will be sent out via email after this webinar. So our next webinar is on the 23rd of September. And the topic is building soil carbon in vineyards. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Dr. Mark Farrell from the CSIRO, Professor Tim Cavanaro from Uni of Adelaide, and Joseph Marks, also from Uni of Adelaide, have to say on this topic. So if you're keen to join us for that webinar, just jump on the AWRI website, look for the webinars and register. So thank you again, and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.